Happy Friday, everybody. Going to do something a little different today. Digging deep in my toolbox, I found some nice tools of mine that have fallen into disrepair and neglect. It needs to be improved. I've also got a couple of helpful tips and some things, other things to show you. First of all is this little 4-ounce Stanley ball peen hammer. Not widely used, but on occasion you have some delicate touch you need. You use this, or you got a tight spot you've got to get into. This little hammer will do the job. And of course, like a lot of tools in the box, they've been around a long time. I don't even know when or where I acquired this, but the handle is dirty, scratched. The Stanley label, unfortunately, was not able to be saved, but the head of it is marked Stanley, and of course it's rusty and dirty, so we want to clean it up to make it nice for when we use it. A couple of things were interesting on this tool. Here's a nice reason why the head was loose. Whoever or whenever this shim was installed in there, you can see it cracked the head of it. The head was cracked, the head of the hammer. So evidently when they put it in there, it was oversized or not right. And of course, because the head was cracked, it was opened some, caused everything to be loose, and the shim fell out. When or where, I have no idea. It wasn't in my toolbox. Just not there anymore, and of course that needs to be repaired. But rather than just install a new shim, what of course we needed to do, and I did, was take the head of it, use some JB Weld to repair the crack in the head, and then after that, look at the general condition of it. You can see it's rusty, the wood is dirty, needs to be put into nice shape like we have all our tools. So here's the finished product. Turned out quite nice. Took the handle, restored it, scraped it, sanded it, stained it a nice oak, and took the head of it. You can see the Stanley name on there. It's kind of faint. It was kind of worn, but it's still on there. And instead of putting the black paint back on the hammers like a lot of them have, this one turned out so nice looking, finished so nicely, I decided to just use the natural finish on it. And of course it's a great improvement over what we started with, and the head is solid. You can see, put in the new shim. It's in good shape. So back in the toolbox, ready to be used for the next project. This next item is one of my favorite tools. It's a 2-pound hammer, and it's my little go-to tool. I use it for most everything where I need a little heavier weight, and it certainly does the job. I've been using this tool 30, maybe 40 years. I don't know how long I've had it. Had it for a long time. And as you can see, it's got some wear on it, it shows, but it still does a good job. But unfortunately, along the way, I had to do a repair. The head became loose and wobbly, and I can't have that, especially when we got a project to do on a pretty regular basis. But looking at the tool, you can see that it was filled with epoxy after the shim was installed. And it was rock solid, hard as a rock epoxy. I wasn't able to do any kind of repair from that end, so I did what we wouldn't do today, but here's what I did to remedy that. I actually drove 2 drywall screws in from the bottom up into the head. not the proper way to do it. You know, it did the job, it held tight, but every time I used this tool, I looked at it and I thought, that's really ugly. Why would I have a tool like that I use when I'm a tool guy? And so one day I picked it up and I said, time to remedy that situation. As if getting the epoxy out wasn't hard enough, that shim would not give. I tried and tried, couldn't get it out, so I used the way that we do these things, drilled a hole in the shim, and used a drywall screw. Drywall screws are hardened screws, so they will tap into steel. And it tapped right in, drove it down a nice little distance, and then used the claw on my claw hammer to pull it out, and was able to remove that shim. Of course, I created kind of a messy hole there, which I filled with wood, and then reinstalled the shim. And then it was nice and tight, ready for a finish. The hammer can't, even though it looked good and it worked good now, I can't continue to use a hammer like this. I already made the decision to improve it. So here's the finished product. Painted a nice regal red. I re-epoxied over the shim when I reinstalled it because there was a gap in here, and so I made sure that I filled it with epoxy to ensure the head was good and snug. The handle turned out very nice, scraped, sanded, restained with my nice oak stain, but really a tool that I'll be proud to use now. Every time I pick it up, I don't know, just feels good to use a nice new tool. You know how it is when you're on a project. Okay, I know you're saying, what the heck is that? Well, I frequent about once a week. I get a takeout meal, and they always supply me sometimes 3 or 4. I don't know why, of these little packs in there. And I found a good use for them. Items you can use in the shop. Nice plastic knife, mixer for epoxy, mixer for paint, spreader for glue. Can always can't get enough of those. The fork you can use as a mixer or a spreader too. And of course, even got a rag with it in case you have an emergency need to wipe up something that you're working on. So I've got a whole bag of these. It seemed like I collected them on, and hey, they work great in the shop. Now here's another item I acquired many years ago, and they used to be pretty readily available at the nut, bolt, and screw companies. I think I picked this one up as a giveaway at a convention, and it's a gauge. It has a lot of great uses. On this side is one to determine your nut size when you don't know. You go to put it on. If it's too loose, of course, you move up till you find the right one. And there you are. But you notice it only went halfway down on here. The reason it went halfway down on here is the top portion is a coarse thread and the bottom portion is a fine thread. So if it slides all the way on, it's a fine thread. And of course, there's your size, 5/8 inch. Same thing for smaller ones, 1/4 inch. This goes on the 5/16 halfway down, so it's a 5/16 coarse thread. You know, in the past, you'd pick up a bolt and you'd try and try and try till you came up with the right one. This tells you instantly what you need. Next item on here is one to determine your bolt diameter. Goes anywhere from number 6, number 8, number 10, 1/4 inch, 5/16, all the way up through 3/4. Doesn't fit the smaller, you move up till you find it. This is a 5/16 bolt. So there's a quick way to tell on that one. Of course, you've got larger sizes too. There's that. I thought this was a 3/8 when I first picked it up, and of course, it's a 5/8. Same thing over here for metric. It goes from an metric 6 up through a metric 20 diameter. So metric is covered too. Another gauge over here shows you head markings and what they mean. In inch sizes, here's one here. Got 3 little marks on it. You can see the marks. that means it's a grade 5 steel. Grade 8 has six marks on it, and 9 I'm not familiar with. I don't know what that is. On the metric side, I know the steel goes from 5.8, 8.8, and that's, of course, that came out of Europe, and that's how they still identify their steels. Also some measuring gauges on the side, but for bolt measuring, oh, by the way, when you go to your, you're not limited to bolts over here, and that here's a 5/16 lag screw. Works for screws, it works for bolts too. Say you want to determine the length of a bolt you've got. You're looking at it and trying to decide what it is. Here's a gauge, you put it on here, and it tells you that it's a 2-inch bolt. And in metric, it's 50 millimeters, or actually about 49 millimeters. There's also a standard metric gauge over here if you want to use it that does the same thing. But this one gives you both. If you have a flathead bolt, how do you measure that? There's a slot that's designed for it right here. Fits right in there, tells you the length of it. If you have a metric one, here's a metric gauge. So it'll give you flathead, and of course if you have a round head bolt, it works just like your hex head bolt. You just fit it in there, and it tells you what you got. So interesting little items, a lot of way to identify, bolts or nuts that you might have, lag screws, other items in your shop. Handy item. Well, that's my restorations and tips for the day. Thanks for watching.